Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There's no doubt that praying behind a deviant, according to the Hanafi madhab, is makruh. This is well established in the books of the madhab. Inshallah, in the next few days, we'll put up an answer on the Islam Answers website with the references. That's not in question, though. The question is, who is a deviant? Now, sometimes this is really quite clear, and even the classical scholars spoke about it, like the Khawarij group, they are considered deviants. The Rawafid, they're considered deviants, the Shia. But one of the big issues we have nowadays is you have recently established groups who claim to be the true Sunnis, and they are often against other specific groups and consider them to be deviants. This is a major concern, a huge problem, and no doubt we should follow the way of the classical scholars and not divide up into newly founded groups. Inshallah, in the description we'll put a link to a video where I go into much more detail regarding this issue and the many harms of it. But this has become a problem. So one of these groups, let's take for example the Deobandis, they will attack the Brelvis. Now, I'm not trying to say every single person who calls himself Deobandi is like this, nor every single person who considers himself to be a Brelvi is like this, but this is widespread. So, they'll say that group is astray, therefore they are deviants, therefore praying salah behind an imam of theirs renders your salah makruh, and vice versa. And you have other groups that will do the same as well. Some extreme Sufis may say this, sometimes some extreme Sufis will say things like whoever doesn't have a shaykh, meaning in bay'ah, is the shaitan is his sheikhs, therefore he is deviant. And then you'll have the opposite end of that, who say the Sufis are all astray. And one of the major problems is what they tend to do is they'll look or they'll find the worst things in the books of that other group, and they will say every person from that group believes this. This is a problem, it's unfair, it's unjust. Or they'll say, oh, this is a book that people from your group accept or teach or respect. Therefore, everything in it you believe, and therefore you must believe this. This leads to huge problems. Fine, it is fine to find a problematic statement in a book and then raise the question with a particular individual and say to that individual that question that individual, what do you say about this particular statement, rather than to assume that everybody from the Brelvi group, for example, believes in this particular statement mentioned in this particular book is unfair. Ask the person, okay? Or in a Deobandi book, it says this, so every person who studied in a Deobandi madrasa or teaches in a Deobandi masjid or even prays in a Deobandi masjid believes in that. Ask the person. And this is one of the problems we have, because often people who are at the more extreme end of this kind of sectarianism will not speak to the others. They will not communicate with them. They won't interact with them. And they'll be told to keep a distance. Well, then how can you ask the person? How can you have that discussion? So this is a huge problem. We shouldn't think the worst of people. We shouldn't make assumptions that this person prays in this masjid or this person went to this madrasa, or even if this person labels himself a Deobandi or labels himself a Brelvi. It's not necessary that the worst things you find or the most extreme things you find amongst people who call themselves by that name are true of this individual. Like I've heard, they'll say every Brelvi makes sajda to the grave. No, they don't. Absolutely false. Speak to them, ask them. Every Deobandi believes this about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, they don't. Speak to them, ask them. Now, yes, if you know with regards to a particular imam who leads the prayer that he has this specific problematic belief or this specific deviancy, Of course, in that case, the fatwa might apply to this individual, and it may be makruh to pray behind this individual, of course. But the problem is assumptions, the problem is sectarianism. He belongs to that group, my group hates that group, my group considers them deviants, my group are the true Sunnis, they are not true Sunnis, therefore praying behind them is makruh. And as I said, many of the recently established groups take this kind of stance, take this kind of approach. We must be fair and just. As Muslims, we are commanded to be fair. We must not make assumptions regarding individuals. We must avoid making sweeping statements, rather speak to the person. Now, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.